Everyone, this is Yazin. Before we get started, can we please confirm that everybody can hear me fine? Wouldn't be much of a webcast if we didn't have any audio. If you can hear me okay, just write a comment, post a reply. Just let me know that you can hear okay before we get started. Right, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you for confirming. Let's give everybody a minute to get in before we kick this webcast off. All right, I'm seeing some people show up. All right, just a bit longer. All right, let's get started. So this will be recorded, so for any of you that can't actually make it live, then you'll be able to review a recording of this quarterly update. This is a review of our second quarter, ladies and gentlemen. We've got quite a few things that I'd like to take us through. But before that, let me just share a high-level agenda. The way we'll break this down is I'll spend a bit of time talking about verified payments. I'll give you a bit of intro about what that's about. For some of you that might be newcomers, I'll tell you a little bit about verified payments, what we've been working on since the last quarter update, and then we'll talk a little bit about verified protocol. This is the core reputation protocol that many of you would be familiar with. And then towards the end, we'll leave some room for Q&A. Any questions that you might have, you can post the Reddit or the Telegram group. We'll pick those up and we'll go through as many of those as we possibly can. So we'll leave a good chunk of time. We'll leave about half an hour towards the end for Q&A. So with that said, let's dive right in. We'll start with verified payments. And so the core concept, the first question you ask is, what is verified payments? We announced earlier this year our initiative around verified payments, and the core idea there is that we do cheap instant transfers across the UAE initially. So our initial target market was the United Arab Emirates, and the core idea here is that we'll be able to provide a solution for doing real-time bank-to-bank transfers that cost very, very little to us as a company. And so we can expose this solution to other companies that would require some sort of transaction processing, so some way to efficiently move money between one bank account to another. And so some of you might be asking, hey, I thought this was like a crypto project. What's going on here? Like, what are you talking about? What's all this about bank transfers? I thought crypto was supposed to kill banks. Well, we thought the same thing initially. However, as I detailed in a Medium post earlier, several Medium posts talking about the challenge of crypto commerce, so this idea that you can buy and sell things using cryptocurrencies. The biggest problem, today is that this cryptocurrency market is virtually non-existent. You have unreliable on-off ramps to crypto. So from something that people actually have, so fiat, this could be USD, pounds, euros, whatever it is, but some reliable way for getting from fiat to crypto and back. This is still lacking. So in areas like the US and many parts of Europe, sure, it's a solved problem, but it is arguable that the biggest need or the biggest requirement for such a solution is in areas where it is lacking, and so pretty much the rest of the world. The other problem is that you don't have a reliable stablecoin. There are some contenders. However, there is no clear, reliable stablecoin, something that's sustained. It's pegged to whether it's the USD or some basket of currencies over a prolonged period of time, and without a reliable stablecoin, you'll have that you'll constantly be facing this reality where people are holding on to crypto because they expect the value of that cryptocurrency to go up. The vast majority of people are just going to be speculators. Unless you have a stablecoin, it's proven that the people actually using the stablecoin are buying and selling things with it. Now, and so based on that, some people might just say, oops, okay, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and build out a crypto solution and not care, we're just going to build it. We said we'd build it. We'll go ahead and build it. And the market, can do whatever it likes. It doesn't matter to us. And that would actually be the easy way to do this. However, we went back and thought, okay, let's rethink this whole thing. There are two parts to any transaction. The first is actually moving money from the buyer to the seller. And then the second part is moving some sort of product or service from the seller back to the buyer. This is the item that was sold, whether it's a physical item or some sort of digital item. Now, regardless, you can view the transaction in this context. There are two parts to it. First involves moving money. The second involves moving a product or service. And so we went back to the drawing board. We're like, all right, let's see is there a reliable way for moving money unidirectionally? So from one place to another, without the risk that transaction can be undone somehow by some third party, some party external to the transaction itself. And so we found that this was actually very difficult to do today. You have things like credit cards and debit cards. You have other payment methods, but by and large, it's very difficult to find a payment method that fulfills all these three criteria. It's reliable, low cost, and it's unidirectional. And so we set out to build one. And we didn't want to create a wholly new payment method, which very few people actually had access to, or would require some sort of exchange from a form of value that they already have to this new form of value. And so we thought long and hard about this and found eventually that bank accounts already exist. And if we're able to interface somehow with these bank accounts, which has been historically very hard to do because banks themselves are not very forthcoming. They don't provide you access to their internal APIs, and they don't make it easy for other people to interface or to integrate with the banks themselves. And so historically, it's just been very difficult to create any sort of solution that works, certainly not across a large number of banks. And so that's what we set out to do. Since this initial idea, by the way, if you'd like more details about how this actually works, how the thinking, the data, references, everything else, check out our Medium at medium.com/verifyas. And I dive into this across a two-part post, so you can definitely look that up. I've left a link here, and we'll put a link in the description. Now, here's the big news. This is now live. Verify Payments is now officially live, and you can access it yourself. This has been huge. We spent several months building this out ever since we first announced the idea. It's always been, all right, we know how this might work, but integrating all the various moving parts, making sure that it's actually reliable, making the UI usable. All of these questions were open, and now finally we've come up with what we think is an initial version that is worthy, to demonstrate to you. And so you can actually access this demo yourself. Hit the link from now, like it's actually live right now. You can access it. Go to demo.verifypayments.com and you can actually see it for yourself. Now, this initial demo is very simple. We're open to feedback. We'd love to get your input. Try it out. We've opened it initially with just one bank, which is Emirates NBD, and this simple demo allows you to do one thing, which is donate to the Emirates Foundation. So we picked one account and we picked one bank just for the sake of simplicity. We're really excited about sharing this update with you and allowing you to actually use this yourself. So what I'll do now is I'll actually show you a demo of this working with a test Emirates NBD account. So this is an actual NBD account, ENBD account, and you'll be able to see how this process works for this very simple demo. So we'll head on over to demo.verifypayments.com. I've got it open over here. And so when you hit the try the demo button, there's a pay with verify option. And you see two options here. You've got the select your bank. You can select verify, which is like a mock bank. We're not actually a bank yet. So if you don't have an Emirates NBD account, you'll be able to select verify, and you can actually see how the checkout flow would work. Now I happen to have one, so we'll go to Emirates NBD. I've already put in my username and my password, and so once I hit login, what's actually happening is that it's communicating with the bank directly. We don't cache any of these results now. There are a lot of sort of optimizations that we can do in order to make this process work quicker, but we actually connected directly to the bank to retrieve all of these details. So you'll see that the amount here is 1 dirham. I'm going to be donating 1 dirham to the Emirates Foundation. And here you can see a drop down of the various accounts that I have at ENBD. And so I'm going to pick that first account, the 701 account, and you can see the balance here as well. This is again retrieved in real time from the bank itself. Now, once I'm ready, I just hit transfer, and after a few seconds have passed, we send this request directly to the bank to initiate a transfer from my account, so from this selected account, to the Emirates Foundation account. And that's it. Success. The transfer is complete after a matter of seconds. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the experience that we wanted to build for banks. The ability to move money from any account to any other account in a matter of seconds. This is unheard of, and it's taken us forever to get to this point, but we're so excited to be finally able to share this with you. And if you have an Emirates NBD account, then I highly recommend that you check this out for yourself. For those that don't, we will be posting instructions for how you can use the mock account to see how the functionality actually would work in real life. Except there won't be any donations made. It won't actually send any money or move any money from one account to another, but you'd be able to see the user experience for yourself. So this is it. You check it out. The URL is demo.verifypayments.com. We're so excited to be able to share this with you. And we initially picked up one bank. We actually have about 9 banks integrated so far. However, we only exposed one because the Emirates Foundation only has a single account at Emirates NBD, and it was hard finding one company that has accounts across all of these banks. And so yeah, we wanted to push this out in time for this quarterly review, and I'm happy that we have. So we'll go back to the pitch here, and so yeah, definitely check out the link and let us know what you think. Here again, donate directly to the Emirates Foundation via your Emirates NBD account, and it takes 3 clicks, just like you saw. In your case, if you're doing a first-time transfer, then you may be asked some security questions, and that's integrated directly into the interface, so everything just works seamlessly. If you have feedback, definitely let us know, team@verify.as. Now, the second part I'd like to talk about in this quarterly update is the Verify protocol. Now, you might be thinking, wait, what? I thought implementation was postponed until around 2019, maybe longer, maybe beyond. Well, actually, we've already started working on an initial release of this protocol, and we're shooting to have this done this coming quarter. So by September, we're expecting to have an initial release of the Verify protocol. This is crazy. This is actually the implementation that we described in the white paper. It'll be an initial release, so it won't have all the features that we described there. But the big thing there, the big news there, is this will have native support for CRED. 1% of every transaction done on this Verify protocol will be converted in real time via an exchange. So this is real. 1% of every single transaction will be automatically funneled through some sort of existing exchange, so some live exchange where there's a sufficiently padded order book so we can buy directly from that exchange. So we'll be demoing that this quarter by September, and we're super excited to be able to show that to you. Again, this was originally planned for 2019, but we've actually been working on this in parallel to all of the work that we've been doing with Verify Payments. And so with that, the final part to this discussion is just a Q&A and I'd like to hand it over to Ibrahim to take this discussion forward.
Thank you, Yazan, for the presentation. That was very informative. We have a few questions asked by the community, and guys, if you have any more questions, feel free to post them. And if time permits, we will answer those in this stream. Otherwise, I'll be answering those later on. So, Yazan, we have a question from Popeye. So the question is, are you planning to open source any code? This question was asked in Telegram.
Sure. So that's an excellent question. I think it's important for us to be able to open source as many pieces as possible. And the only contingency there is where it doesn't make sense, like where we actually lose some sort of competitive advantage, then we'll have to exercise caution. So far we've open sourced a few things. So the initial version of a few of the integrations that we planned on doing with WooCommerce, a demo, and we're currently, so as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there are a bunch of things that we're working on related to both Verify payments and the Verify protocol. And so we're going to try and open source some of those things. At the very least, some of the important things, certainly like the smart contract would be a big piece to open source on the Verify protocol side, just so that general users can sort of see how things work under the cover. So this is part of the assurance that we will provide users of the Verify payments, the Verify protocol service. And so, yeah, that's something to look forward to. And we do have a bunch of sort of private GitHub repos that host a lot of the other things like our API, our integrations with banks and various other things, which we won't be able to open source anytime soon, primarily because of the earlier point I made around losing some sort of competitive advantage or potentially giving competitors an edge or the ability to compete against us.
Makes sense, yeah. There is also another question from Papai. This is a more legal question. He's asking if market making is legal and if this is something Verify is considering.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you ask. I think it's legal under certain conditions, and not all of those conditions are fulfilled in the crypto space. So there are certain conditions around transparency and visibility between the buy side and the sell side, and I think I think we could probably, if we work with some sort of established firm, then this is something we could do. However, this is something that would be very important when it comes time to release our Verify protocol. And so part of the solution involves actually buying cred off the market, and naturally that's going to require some sort of liquidity within the market. And so if we struggle to have liquidity at that point, then we would have to stoke liquidity ourselves through some sort of market making service. So that's something we'll consider down the line, given certain conditions. And it would be most likely to happen as we come closer to a Verify protocol release, which we're shooting for this coming quarter.
All right. And I think you also mentioned in the presentation that the 1% cred would also act as a supply backup for the cred.
Correct. Yeah, we'll be buying up credit, and naturally that's going to require that there's a seller on the other side.
Definitely. We have another question. This is I think Pavel will be answering this one. This question is best answered by Pavel. This is a technical question. The question says, how do you plan on scaling up your solution to address the large markets? Are there any technical bottlenecks you think you will brush against?
So from the technical point of view, we are using AWS services, and we architecting our infrastructure in the way that it can easily scale. Like we checking the CPU usage, memory usage. So the system automatically launches new instances or Docker containers. So from the technical point of view, there should not be any issues. But again, as we know that any solution at some point will have a bottleneck, right? So we'll have to solve this bottleneck, and then we'll find another bottleneck, and so on and so forth. So for now, the load is not big, and we don't see any bottlenecks for scaling.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think
this
one
question
of the problems when he joined was switch from, we were using Heroku at the moment previously to AWS, and obviously Pavel's got a lot of experience there, but also AWS allows us to much more efficiently scale up as and when it's required.
Awesome. We also have another question. I think Yazan would be answering this one. You mentioned something about it in the presentation, but I'll go ahead and ask it anyway. It's from Marco from Telegram. The question is the team looking for any other countries or areas to expand to?
So our initial focus was actually on UAE and solely the UAE. But based on some details that I'm going to be posting on Medium later today, so right after this call, what we're actually going to do is partner up with existing providers in every market that we intend to expand to. And one of the big advantages of this approach is that we'll be able to expand at a much quicker pace. So it's not going to be just the UAE or just Bahrain. It's actually going to be a large expansion within a very short period of time across the Middle East region. Again, like some of the logic behind actually starting in the Middle East region is it's a region of e-commerce growth. So there is huge growth relative to the global market in terms of e-commerce. And so this could be huge upside for us. So we grow with the trend. And also we're able to partner, like, because we have relationships with a lot of the companies and the individuals in this space, it makes it a lot easier for us to partner with the right people, make sure that we can get the solution up and running. So the idea there is really just use as many of the competitive advantages that we can use in order to get up and running really quickly. And so yeah, like initially our focus is going to be not just on the UAE, but the whole region, the Middle East region. And yeah, once that's done, who knows where we'd go next. But our sites are focused right now on the entire region.
Awesome. Speaking of progression, there's a question asked by Yali and similarly asked by And Holub regarding the roadmap, if there is any clear roadmap, and if there will be any delays to expect in the roadmap.
Yeah, so like we had several iterations or versions of the roadmap. We initially started with the one highlighted in the white paper, and they've undergone some changes. And so we obviously, focus now is primarily on verified payments and our ability to fulfill that first half of the transaction that I was describing earlier. And so being able to move money or value, from one person, a buyer to a seller. And so that is really our focus. I've highlighted this in the master plan that we released earlier. That was in the first quarter. And this will continue to be our focus until we have market dominance in at least one of those areas. And so while we've already announced that, yes, we are going to be working on the verified protocol ahead of schedule, it does mean that we're still going to continue with the sort of verified protocol roadmap at a reduced pace, but we will have a verified protocol release. We'll have an update there for people that are looking to integrate crypto as a means of payment, and we'll also be focusing on the verified master plan and just making sure that we're up to speed on that market opportunity, which we think is going to be very, very significant. And so we'll be doing both. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think it's something we're comfortable with. Like the roadmap is continually updated to sort of meet what our current expectations are, but so far we're on schedule.
Awesome. There is another technical question has been posted. I think Pavel would be, if you can answer this, if you can tell us more about the solution, um, the under the hood, and what interesting challenges did you face while building the solution?
So this is, I guess, this will be a long answer. So as I said, we're using AWS services like virtual private cloud, Elastic container services, RDS, KMS. So we use them because they are scalable, they are secure, reliable. So we try to avoid building things like in infrastructure our hands. From the application or system point of view, so we have API servers, so they accept requests like different type of requests like authentication, payment request. So we have a message queue where request to bank API goes, and we have things like a cluster of Docker containers. So we run browsers or microservices inside containers. They keep connection with the bank for each transaction and so on. So we use AWS services, and we are trying to, to use services that are PCI DSS compliant. So PCI DSS is a banking standard for security. So we want to keep security level high, and that is why we just select services that are compliant. So for challenges, I think that there are many of them, but I think that two of them that I want to share. So first of all, when we integrate with the bank, so there are two types of integrations we can use. The first one is internet banking. So when user goes to the bank via use the bank via browser, like they open browser, type URL, type login password, and things like this. And the second one is when a bank has mobile application, so we can somehow find what is the API for this application and use this API. And the trick that a lot of banks has very old internet banking system that I don't know, open pop-ups, they do some crazy things, and like things like show capture or just don't have any sessions. They will stop session like in 5 minutes, so there are no way to reload or refresh session. I hope that it's enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Pavel said, like it's incredibly complex, right? There's such a huge surface area, and yet, so what we try to do, and this is like something that Pavel oversees, is just making sure that we can automate as much of this as possible, so that we deal with exceptions as opposed to dealing with standard processes. And so, yeah, it's pretty like there are a lot of technical pieces, moving parts, and so. Pavel's generally kept very busy.
Awesome, thank you. So there's another question we have from Alan. He wants us to talk about the partnerships. Maybe if you can, Yazan, talk a little bit about some feedback that we've got from partners and what's the next step.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a big thing. Like for us, we initially thought, okay, we'll try and set this up ourselves. Go through the entire registration process, get regulated in every single market that we launch to. But like I said earlier, the goal in partnerships is just to be able to get up and running a lot quicker, and essentially we're a technology provider as opposed to like a regulated entity. And this means that it's much easier for us to expand, cover other markets, as I said earlier, but also that it means that we have less regulatory risk. We partner with people that are already being regulated by local government entities, Yeah, this reduces a lot of the hurdles that we would have to go through ourselves. Partnerships wise, I can't actually release any names until we do like an official press release. But we're already working very closely with a partner in Bahrain. This is one of the largest payment service providers in the country, as well as in the UAE and a few other places. And so as we get closer to an official press release by us and by our partners, then you'll be able to hear about it directly from them.
Awesome, thank you. So I think you've already answered the question about GitHub. So Dark Life was asking about, is there any way for him to see the GitHub activity? And before I give you the mic, Yazin, I've already shared some stats about the GitHub activity some time back. Some requested to see some numbers about commits and pushes. So if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how useful that is. I guess we can gauge based on the feedback that comes from the community. But generally, I think people are just anxious to see some sort of update, and so it may not make a whole lot of sense. Like, in reality, commits don't mean a whole lot out of context. Like stats around commits, I don't know how useful they are as a metric. Because they would require you to know exactly what it was that was committed and what was actually done. Because you can easily write a script that just logs in hundreds of commits every single day. And so what I think more of is this is sort of like an indicator for a lot of people that might have wavering trust in like our ability to get things done, or us actually working on the right things. And so I would just say, like, there's certain things that we make public at the time that we see appropriate, but just generally speaking, like you're a lot more present in the Telegram group and Reddit and various other social media outlets, and questions that the community might have will be answered. But I don't know how useful it would be to actually share things like that. Again, you want to draw a very thin, like there's a thin line between just sharing everything and actually compromising your ability to compete as a business or to build a viable business, because yeah, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, like our goal, our purpose is to build a viable business, and sometimes being too open can actually be a big problem.
And I also want to add that so we use Bitbucket also, not only GitHub. And right now in Bitbucket, you just see that we have close to 20 repositories. So for infrastructure, for different Docker containers, we have repositories, and they have a lot of amount of code. Like for infrastructure, for example, we use Terraform that manage infrastructure, all things that I said, like VPC, RDS, and we can't just share it publicly because it's not secure.
Great. The next question is about the 1% cred of the transaction that's to happen. So Zabadi Manga is asking about, he talked to some of his friends and they like the fact that Verify is charging the 1% in cred, buying of each transaction, buying the 1% in cred. But his concern is, or he's wondering or asking about the 1% being high in value. So what can you tell us about that, Yazin?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. And I think, so I think it depends what you're charging for. So it depends on what it is, what service you're providing. And when we set out the white paper and described the solution that we did there, the 1% there was, for this end-to-end solution where we provide 100% buyer protection on every single transaction. Now, obviously, in the context of Verify payments, then we're not providing 100% buyer protection, because The reputation protocol is not there. That's something that's still a work in progress. And various other important pieces of this they're just not there yet. And so as a result, it really, it might not make a whole lot of sense to charge 1% from day one for verified payments. However, verified protocol, you can bet that we're going to be able to charge that 1% because here we're benchmarking against alternative solutions like credit cards where, the benchmark is much higher. So credit card, in the credit card space, people are used to paying, so people like merchants are used to paying 2 to 3% off each transaction. And so as a result, 1% would actually be considered a very good deal. And so it really depends on how you're benchmarking yourself against and against what solution you're comparing yourself to. But I think initially, like the solution that we provide to merchants would probably be a percentage based. So 1% would actually be a good benchmark, but it would be capped at a certain amount. And so we would not charge 1% off, say, $100,000 transaction. It just wouldn't make sense. We cap it at some sort of amount that makes sense for us and our partners. And so this is still something that's a work in progress. Like I wouldn't say like the 1% would make sense for verify protocol. So at the protocol level, it would make sense to charge 1%. However, at the current stage, then it's largely an experiment, and we'll see what sort of numbers make the most sense for us and our partners.
True. I think the numbers would really give us the right answer. There is another question on if there is any chance of publishing the roadmap. And I think you've already talked about this, Yazan, in that there is a change is always happening. And do you want to add anything else to this inquiry about publishing the roadmap?
Yeah, maybe this is something we can be more visible about. Like we can actually post on our Reddit and our community.verify.as page and on Twitter and everywhere else. I think maybe this is something we just need to make more prominent. But we've already shared like the master plan, which details exactly how we plan to approach this problem and this market opportunity. And yeah, we do update it with based on the feedback and our progress to date to make sure that we communicate with the community how we're faring against each of those points. So yeah, I would just say check the master plan, check the roadmap that we detailed in the white paper for verify protocol, and we'll in the meantime, like we'll work on making this more visible, sharing it on Reddit, and having like a section where we actually link directly to it.
All right, awesome. Let's see, what else do we have here? I'm trying to manage the time.
Half-hour mark. Well, we're probably past the half-hour mark. You want to take like,
yeah.
A couple more questions?
I'm actually trying to see. I think we passed the time, but we can go through like a few other questions.
One quick one. One
Okay.
or quick questions.
All right, cool. Let's do two. One for Pavel and one for you, and we end by the last. So the question for Pavel. This is technical about what's the biggest technical challenges standing in the way of verified payments today?
That I have answered this question already, so yes, and so we can go to the next question.
Yeah, this was answered already. So
yeah.
then we can take the last. We can take the last one. Yazan. Yeah, awesome. So Yazan, if you can tell us, now this is a good one. Are you satisfied with your results so far? What worked out worse than you expected it, and what are your goals for Q3?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think personally, I tend to be very optimistic about the goals that we set, and we always think planning ahead. It's always easy to say, oh, we're going to do so much in the span of a couple of months, right? And and frankly, like I would have expected to do more. I would have hoped that we'd be able to do more. And so I'm I'm never happy. Like despite like having come quite a ways from when we just started, and you know, despite looking back and seeing all the decisions that we've made, all of the challenges that we faced and overcome, it still feels to me like there's a lot to do, and yeah, like there are days when I feel like nothing is working. There are challenges everywhere. It's difficult to get through a lot of these challenges, and yeah, it's something we continue to push through, and I hope like we have very high hopes for Q3, and we now that we have an actual live demo, now that we've got actual partnerships with a lot of these payment service providers in the region, and so I have great hopes for Q3. I think Q3 for us is going to be the time when we actually start processing transactions through verified payments, and that is going to be a big turning point for us as a company. And so yeah, this has been difficult. We've waded through a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of challenges, and yet we've been able to come through, and we've been able to deliver on a lot of the most important pieces. And so a lot of the foundational stuff is now out of the way, and we'll be able to focus on optimizing our business, you know, getting transactions through, actually making revenue. So Q3 is going to be the quarter where we make revenue as a company.
Awesome. I know there are many other questions. I'll be available in you can ask your questions in any of the channels we have, and we'll be more than happy to answer them there. So in the meantime, thank you for tuning in, and thank you, Yazan and Pavel, for being here. Any last words?
It's gonna be an exciting quarter, and I'm super pumped about the next 3 months, and I hope like same time next quarter we're gonna have a very exciting discussion with a lot of the community, and yeah, I just think I think we have the perfect team to take us through that next quarter, and yeah, I appreciate everybody coming in, tuning in to join this this webcast, this quarterly update, and thanks for seating us some great questions, Ibrahim.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.